I want to share the story of a profoundly moving weekend I spent with my dad in experience that renewed our bond and filled us both with hope. After years of drift and silence intensified by the grief and strain of losing Dad and I had grown distant, our relationship felt fragile and neither of us quite knew how to find our way back to the comfort we once shared. So on a bright spring morning we packed a bag each and headed for the coast, determined to rediscover what had been lost. Arrival and first impressions. We pulled into the small beach town just as the tide was turning. The road curved through dunes of pale grass and wildflowers until finally the ocean came into view, endless and reassuring. I remember stepping out of the car and taking a deep breath of salt-tinged air, feeling a rush of freedom I hadn't known I missed. The sand was cool beneath my toes. Each grain seemed to whisper, "Here's your fresh start." Dad was quiet too, but I could see tension easing from his shoulders. He managed a small smile as we unpacked, and for a moment we simply stood together, watching the waves roll in, reconnecting one step at a time. Our plan was simple: no schedules, no agendas, just time together. We spent the afternoon wandering along the water's edge, boots in hand, laughing at the way the surf chased us back. Dad pointed out a cluster of shells and driftwood, and I found myself recalling family beach trips from my childhood, Mom's laughter drifting on the breeze, Dad chasing me with a floppy hat. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in lavender and gold, we settled on a log overlooking the sea. The gentle roar of the surf filled the silence between us, more comforting than any words. Then Dad reached over and slipped his hand into mine, the same hand that used to pass me cotton candy at the fair, the same hand that steadied my wild first by pride. I squeezed back, grateful and surprised by how natural it felt. A night by the bonfire. That evening we built a fire right on the sand. We gathered driftwood pieces, some bleached white by sun and salt, and watched as Dad struck a match. The flames roared to life, sending up sparks that danced against the velvet sky. We roasted marshmallows until they turned golden and sticky, and I told him about my work, my hopes, the little moments of joy and struggle. He listened, really listened, asking gentle questions and sharing stories of his own memories I'd never heard before of his childhood and his dreams. There was something healing about the crackle of fire and the endless rhythm of the waves. The world felt reduced to this glowing circle of warmth, this pocket of light in which everything else could wait. Everything reflections. I woke before dawn to the soft light of early morning. The sky was a pale aquamarine, the air cool and sweet. Dad was already up, wrapped in a blanket, staring out over the water. I joined him wordless, and we watched the sun rise together. I thought about all we'd endured, loss, distance, unspoken pain, and felt a quiet determination to carry this new closeness home with us. When the sun peaked above the horizon, it felt like a promise. Dad sighed, a sound of contentment, and turned to me with eyes that held both pride and relief. "This was a good idea," he said simply. I nodded, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, and we sat in comfortable silence, wrapped in the early light of a day that felt full of possibility, carrying the moment forward. By the time we packed up to leave, something fundamental had shifted. Our conversations flowed more easily, our laughter felt lighter, and our silences no longer weighed heavy. We promised each other we'd make time for this, time to talk, to remember, to dream together. And though we both knew life would pull us back into its routines, we also knew the beach had given us something we couldn't lose, a reminder of love's resilience and the importance of simply being present for one another. As we drove away, tracks fading in the sand behind us, I glanced over at Dad and saw him looking ahead, eyes bright with quiet determination. Mine felt too. The road home was long, but we were traveling it side by side, stronger, more hopeful, and infinitely more connected than we had been before. The next morning dawned softly, the sky a pale wash of rose and lavender. We woke before the sun fully rose, drawn outside by the promise of another quiet day together. Dad and I hauled our bikes down to the shore, each pedal stroke echoing the easy rhythm of our renewed companionship. Morning ride along the shore. The sand was cool beneath our tires, and the early light painted the water in silvery hues. As we rode side by side, the salty breeze tugged at my hair and filled my lungs with that wide-open feeling of possibility. Dad glanced over with a gentle grin, and for the first time in years I felt truly seen. We didn't speak at first, words felt unnecessary in the face of such beauty, but after a few minutes he called back to me, "Isn't it perfect?" and I nodded, my throat tight with gratitude. The world seemed to stretch out before us, endless coastline and endless second chances. A small mishap, a shared moment. Halfway down the beach, my front wheel bounced over a hidden drift of seaweed and sent me tumbling into the sand. Pain shot through my ankle, sharp and surprising. I bit back a cry as I sat up, brushing grains of sand from my palms. Dad was immediately at my side, voice calm yet urgent. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes full of concern. I pressed a hand to my ankle. It throbbed, but I shook my head. "I'll be fine," I managed, though the sting lingered. He knelt beside me and helped me to my feet. In that quiet, fleeting moment, him steadying me, his hand firm around mine, I felt a sudden jolt, raw and electric, connecting us more deeply than ever before. It wasn't surprise or fear, it was simply the powerful reminder that we're always stronger together. Exploring the village market. By mid-morning, we decided to explore the nearby village. We locked our bikes outside a row of weathered shacks painted in some wash pastels and wandered into a bustling market square. Stalls overflowed with handmade trinkets, carved wooden pendants, strands of sea-tumbled glass, and vibrant tapestries that fluttered like flags in the breeze. I was drawn to a small booth echoing with the scent of lavender and some warm cedar. A rack of delicate earrings shimmered in the dappled light. Dad patiently waited as I ran my fingers over the polished stones. When I held up a sea glass necklace, soft sea foam green and cool to the touch, I slipped it around my neck and asked him to tell me what he thought. His eyes lit up, warm and proud. "It's beautiful," he said, voice gentle. "Just like you." His words made my heart flutter, cheeks warming. I tapped a strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly shy under his gaze, but in that vulnerability, I found a new depth of closeness. A quiet confession. We paused on a sunlit bench overlooking the harbor as fishermen mended nets and gulls danced overhead. I turned to Dad and felt a surge of courage. "Dad, this trip. I've needed this more than I realized." My voice wavered. "I missed you. I missed us." He exhaled slowly as a releasing gratitude into the warm afternoon air. "I missed you too," he admitted. "I'm sorry for the years I wasn't here the way you needed." His hand found mine again, and I felt both the weight of our past and the lightness of our renewed bond. We sat there for a long moment, letting the voices of the market and the lull of the waves carry us forward. No more apologies were needed. The silence between us was rich with understanding. Sunset promises. That evening, we rode our bikes back to the beach just in time for sunset. The sky unfurled in ribbons of rose, tangerine, and lavender, and we sat atop a dune watching the horizon swallow the sun. Dad tossed a pebble into the surf, and it skipped once, twice, then sank. "I promise," he said softly, "we'll make time like this more often. Life's too short to let days slip away without each other." Tears welled in my eyes as I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I promise too." In that glowing moment, surrounded by the hush of dusk, I realized that our relationship had been reborn, stronger, more honest, and infinitely more precious. As night fell and stars began to sprinkle the sky, we lingered a while longer, two silhouettes against the vast sea, holding on to this new beginning far more tenderly than any of us could have imagined. Under the painted sky, as dusk settled, we chose to wander along the shoreline once more. The horizon was ablaze with shades of mauve and violet, streaked with molten gold, and every breath felt like inhaling pure serenity. I paused on a smooth driftwood log, turning to Dad with a shining in my eyes. "It's breathtaking," I whispered, voice thick with wonder. He stood beside me, arms crossed, gazing out at the sea's gentle swell. "It truly is," he agreed, voice soft and steady. For a long moment, we simply watched the waves curl and break, the sky's colors deepening. A father's letter. Then Dad reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, hand-stitched notebook. My heart fluttered. He rarely carried more than the essentials. Jumping it open, he cleared his throat. I wanted to give you something, he said, his tone wavy with emotion. Inside, I discovered a neatly folded letter. His handwriting was careful, each line infused with pride. My dearest, from the day you took your first steps to the woman you are becoming, I have watched you grow with awe. Your kindness, your courage, and your laughter have always been the brightest parts of my life. I'm so proud of you in all the ways words can barely capture. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey. Tears welled in my eyes as I read those simple but profound truths. Dad's pen had poured out his heart, bridging every gap our years of silence had created. Unspoken promises. I looked up, voice trembling. I don't know what to say. This means the world to me. His gaze met mine, steady, full of warmth. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know how deeply I care. The wind off the ocean rustled the edges of the notebook, and I felt an unbreakable surge of connection. My chest tightened with emotion as I stepped closer and slipped my hand into his. Dad, this week, I feel like we found each other again. He squeezed my hand gently. Me too, he murmured. Our bond is special, more precious than I ever realized until now. I promise I'll always be here for you. In that quiet exchange, every unspoken apology and every lost conversation of the past felt forgiven. We stood side by side, two silhouettes against the radiant sky, silently vowing to cherish every moment we had together. Nightfall reflections. Later, back at the cabin, the windows glowed with lamplight as rain began to patter outside. We settled into comfortable chairs by the hearth, wrapped in soft blankets. The crackle of embers and the gentle rhythm of the rain created a cocoon of peace. We shared stories of old childhood adventures and silly mishaps until our laughter filled the room. Under that protective hush of night, I realized how much I had missed this simple joy, the unguarded warmth of my father's company. The journey home coming arrived on clear wings of light, and we packed our bags with reluctant smiles. As we loaded the car, I glanced back at the cabin and the sand-drenched dunes beyond. I felt a tender ache, knowing this chapter was closing, but also a steady hope for all the pages yet to come. Dad climbed into the driver's seat and caught my eye in the mirror. Thank you, he said quietly. I returned his look, voice strong with gratitude. Thank you, Dad, for everything. On the dryback, the road unfurled beneath us like a ribbon of possibility. Though our week together had ended, I carried with me a renewed sense of closeness, a promise bound in that little notebook, and the certainty that no distance could ever dim what we'd rediscovered under the painted sky. Clouds of uncertainty. That evening, Dad sat at the kitchen table long after the lamps were dimmed, fingertips drumming lightly against a steaming mug of tea. The glow of his phone screen reflected in his thoughtful eyes as he scrolled through a message that seemed to weigh on him. I watched from the doorway, heart tightening with both concern and confusion. Something about his expression was so distant, so conflicted. I stepped closer, voice soft. Everything all right? He looked up, startled as though I'd snapped him out of a dream. He cleared his throat and slipped the phone face down on the table. I'd just reading something that brought up memories, he admitted, the tremor in his voice belying his calm words. Memories I wasn't prepared to feel tonight. The ache in my chest grew. I wanted to bridge the sudden gap between us, to reach across the table and remind him that we were here for each other. But the right words eluded me, and instead we sat in companionable silence, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the still kitchen. Dinner's quiet tension. By the time we gathered around the small dining table for dinner, the air felt charged. The roasted vegetables were fragrant, the chicken tender, but neither of us truly tasted the food. Instead, our conversation drifted on safe, surface-level topics, the weather forecast, plans for the next day, an upcoming neighborhood festival. But every so often I'd catch Dad's gaze lingering on me for a moment, too long eyes reflecting a question he dared not voice. When he reached for the breadbasket with a polite smile, I realized we were both afraid to crack this fragile veneer of normalcy, yet hungering for something deeper. I cleared my throat. Dad, I know things have been complicated, but I want you to know I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. He paused mid-reach, the knife in his hand poised over a roll. His eyes softened and he nodded slowly. I know. And I'm grateful for that more than I can say. The rest of the meal passed gently, each of us finding small courage in the other's quiet presence. A midnight walk under stars. After dinner, the night air was cool and crisp, a welcome contrast to the warm glow inside. We wrapped ourselves in hoodies and stepped out into the hush, the world reduced to the soft crunch of our footsteps on the gravel path. The moon hung low, casting silver ribbons across the lawn. Without a word, we found ourselves side by side on an old wooden bench beneath a blooming magnolia. I inhaled the heady scent of spring blossoms and felt the tension of the evening begin to ebb. Dad glanced at me, voice barely above a whisper. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about the past. My heart fluttered. This was the moment I'd been both dreading and longing for. Me too, I confessed. I've wondered if I said all the things I should have. If I told you how much you mean to me. He turned to face me fully, eyes shining in the moonlight. You've always meant more to me than I ever showed. I'm sorry for the years I wasn't present. We shared a long, quiet embrace, two lost souls finding comfort in each other's arms. Beneath the endless sky. In that gentle clasp, I felt the fragile rope we'd been walking suddenly grow strong. Morning nostalgia at the park. Dawn arrived soft and golden. Over breakfast, we packed a small picnic, fresh fruit, pastry still warm from the bakery, and 2 flasks of steaming coffee. We drove to the little neighborhood park I'd loved as a child, its swing sets still stand, winding paint peeling in cheerful pastels. I climbed onto a swing first, pushing off the ground and soaring into the crisp morning air. The wind whipped through my hair and laughter bubbled up from my chest, pure, unguarded. Joy I hadn't known in years. Dad joined me on the adjacent swing, and for the sweetest moment we were simply father and daughter at play again, free from the weight of adulthood. You always flew the highest, Dad teased, a grin lighting his face. I tilted my head back, eyes bright. Only because I knew you'd catch me if I fell. He paused, gazed distant for just a second, as though the memory of my childhood trust warmed him to his very core. Then he swung higher, his boots carving gentle arcs in the dewy grass. We spent the morning sharing stories, me about my college days, him about the neighborhood kids he once coached in Little League. Each recollection felt like another brick in the bridge we were rebuilding. By the time the sun climbed high in the sky, we lay back on the grass, arms stretched toward the clouds, content in the simple wonder of being together. In that moment, with the world spread out before us like a promise, I knew our journey was far from over, but that no matter where it led, we would travel it hand in hand, hearts open and steadfastly united. A carefree ride at the playground. That afternoon, we arrived at the old neighborhood playground I'd loved as a child. The sun climbed onto the swing facing me and called out with a teasing grin, "This is ridiculous, but it's kind of fun, right?" I laughed, the familiar creak of the chains and the rush of air bringing back memories. "It really is," I replied, pumping my legs forward so we swung back and forth in perfect unison. The sun filtered through the leaves above, dabbling us with light as laughter bubbled up between us. In that simple moment, 2 silhouettes swinging side by side, everything felt like it had once been and could be again. A moment of unexpected intensity. As we swung higher, the wind tugged at my hair and filled my chest with that exhilarating freedom of childhood. Dad glanced over, eyes soft with nostalgia, and for a fleeting instant, our laughter stalled. I caught his gaze and felt my heart race, not with anything romantic, but with the overwhelming joy of being this close again after so many lost years. Startled by the sudden shift in our energy, I reached out instinctively to steady myself. By touching his hand, the contact jolted me, an electric reminder of the trust and safety I'd always felt with him. Dad gave a small, understanding smile, and we both pulled back, cheeks warming with a shared but unspoken realization our bond was deeper than we'd even admitted to ourselves. Getting balance and boundaries. We hopped off the swings and drifted toward a shady bench. Silence settled between us, not awkward but thoughtful, as though we were both reflecting on how much we'd changed and yet how our connection remained steady. Dad cleared his throat. "That was special," he said quietly. I nodded. "It was. I almost forgot how much I loved this place and loved being with you." He looked at me, sincere. "Me too. And I think it's important we remember how to be ourselves around each other while also making sure we respect the father-daughter space that's always been ours." His words felt warm and grounding. I squeezed his hand in agreement, feeling relief at our mutual understanding that this trip was about healing, not crossing lines. Evening stroll through the festival. Later, we wandered into the heart of town where a lively street festival was underway. Strings of lanterns glowed overhead, stalls offered everything from caramel apples to handmade pottery, and the air was alive with laughter and the scent of cinnamon sugar. "Let's try some of that cotton candy," I suggested, pointing to a pastel pink cloud spinning on a stick. We shared the sugary treat, Dad teasing me as I got a little pink fluff stuck to the tip of my nose. His laughter, full and warm, echoed my own, reminding me of all the times he'd made me giggle as a child. We strolled arm in arm, an innocent, affectionate gesture, careful to stay mindful of onlookers. At one point, a paraded dancer swept past, their colorful costumes swirling in a joyous whirlwind. I leaned into Dad's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for this trip. For every laugh, every quiet moment." He looked down at me, pride shining in his eyes. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be the dad you needed," he replied. "No matter what changes, that will never go away." A renewed promise. As the lanterns blinked on against the twilight sky, we paused beneath a canopy of twinkling lights. The laughter of nearby children mingled with distant music, creating a soundtrack of hope and belonging. In that golden glow, I realized how far we'd come from years of silence to this easy closeness. We stood together, hand in hand, promising silently to carry this reconnection home with us. The road ahead might still hold challenges, but our hearts were full of trust and understanding. And that, more than anything, felt like the most precious gift of all, capturing a timeless bond. As the lantern still glimmered in distant memory, I felt an overwhelming urge to freeze this moment forever. "Let's take a selfie," I suggested, holding up my phone. Dad and I leaned close, our shoulders brushing, and smiled into the camera. When I flipped the screen around, I hardly recognized the pair reflected back, eyes shining with an unspoken understanding, lips curved in relief and joy. It was more than a photograph, it was proof that we'd rediscovered something pure and precious in each other. In that single frame, I saw the echoes of every shared laugh, every gentle apology, and every quiet promise we'd made over the past week. The soft glow of the lanterns framed our faces, casting warmth across our features and illuminating the renewed bond between us. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, heart full, and for the first time in a long while, I felt deeply hopeful. Late night reflections. Our drive home was silent, neither of us wanting to shatter the intimate peace we'd rebuilt. When we finally arrived, the house stood dark and still, but my mind raced with questions I couldn't ignore. I lay awake long after Dad's breathing slowed to sleep's gentle rhythm, staring at the ceiling and replaying the day's moments. Could we continue to explore this closeness without losing the sacred father-daughter line? Was it possible to hold these tender feelings, this fierce protectiveness and mutual admiration, without letting them become something more complicated? My heart fluttered at the thought. I felt as though we were walking a tightrope, balancing between the innocent love of a parent and child and a deeper, almost overwhelming emotional intimacy. Yet beneath my uncertainty lay a strong resolve I would not step away from this journey. The week had shown me how powerful forgiveness and openness could be, and I was determined to carry that forward. Whether our path would be smooth or strewn with old fears, I knew the destination, reconnecting. And honesty and love was worth every risk. Dawn of new possibilities. When morning light seeped through my window, it found me already awake, reshaping the dark doubts of last night into fresh determination. I dressed quietly and padded downstairs, finding Dad seated at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of coffee. The steam curled upward like a hopeful promise. Our eyes met, and for a moment, words weren't necessary. We simply smiled, a shared acknowledgement that this chapter was not ending but evolving. I joined him, and we sat together in comfortable silence, watching the soft sunrise paint the room in pale gold. Finally, I spoke. Thank you for yesterday for everything. I know things feel delicate right now, but I believe we can navigate this. I want to keep being here for you, and I hope you feel the same. Dad set down his cup and reached across the table. His hand covered mine, solid and warm. I do, he said. We'll figure it out, step by step. Our bond, this love, deserves nothing less than our very best. In that quiet kitchen, as the world outside came to life, I felt an unshakable certainty. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Our journey of healing had only just begun, and I was ready to embrace every twist and turn with my dad by my side, heart to heart, as we wrote the next pages of our story.